All right, so we are live rolling here. I've been wanting to do this for a while. It's been a very, very busy last week. I've been in Bali, Indonesia here for exactly about 7 or 8 days and coming to you live from my home for the month. I'm staying here for a month at this amazing villa called Oka's in Canggu. I've got two cameras here just because the Wi-Fi isn't really the best. So if I've got my laptop here and my iPhone there. So if you see me looking back and forth, that's why. So yeah, it's been amazing. And I just got a notification from Facebook today that I've been living in Asia for 8 years, which is insane because I remember when I was planning to come here, I literally had like a backpack. I just posted a picture of this to kind of promote this episode and video I was going to be doing of the update that Facebook gave me, how it was like 8 years ago today, you did this. And I was like flying to China and to Beijing during Chinese New Year. And that's why I remember it was this weekend because it's Chinese New Year. I was flying into Beijing and my plan originally was to be here for about 6 months. And that was 8 years ago. So that is absolutely incredible. It just shows you how time flies and plans change. So you can take a look at that picture I just posted, and I had a shaved head back then, and I actually just shaved my head pretty much like the other day here because it's just so hot, and being in the water all the time is super convenient. So full circle, I guess. But I wanted to break down kind of the pros and cons in this episode about what it's like living in Asia and talk about like the different places I've gone to. And if you're interested in traveling over here, there's just so many incredible options, like I remember my first trip. So I flew into Beijing and it was, like I said, it was during Chinese New Year and it was just like insane because all the people were traveling and the airport was insane. And I was just like, wow, this is a very, very different scene from Vancouver, which is kind of funny because Vancouver, they call it Hongcouver because it's such a high, like 50% Asian population almost there. But yeah, being in China, and then from there I went to Seoul, and I remember going downtown Seoul for the first time, and I was just like blown away by all the people and like the subway system, and just everything was just so insane and fast paced, it's just like boom, boom, boom. And I give this analogy a lot when I'm talking to people. They ask, well, what's the difference between Canada and Asia? And I say, well, if you look at Canada on a map, it's like this, right? It's massive. It's like the second biggest country landmass wise in the world, I think. And then I explain, I'm like, Canada has about 30 million people, 35 million people, give or take. And then I look at a country that has about 55 million people. But if you look on a map, Canada's here, and Korea is literally like the size of a half of Vancouver Island. So if you look at Vancouver Island on a map, it takes up like half of that landmass, but it's got double the population. So that's like taking all the people in Canada, doubling them, and then moving them all half of Vancouver Island. And that's kind of gives you an idea of how compact and how densely populated, these cities like Hong Kong. Hong Kong's another great example. Like I remember the first time I went to Hong Kong, and it was crazy because I flew there literally like the same day. I think I booked the ticket in the morning, or I booked it that night, and then I flew there the next day. So I had like no plans. And I remember like the area that I stayed in, there was this one huge building called Chim Kau Mansion or something. It's like a really famous place in Hong Kong. And this whole building had like 8,000 residents in it, like 8,000, and it just took up blocks. And I've never seen anything like that. So like the biggest thing, like culture wise, is definitely like not the land that you have to just kind of like roam free. Everything is just compact. But that's why I love coming to places here like Bali. Like this is my third trip to Bali, and you can just be living here in this amazing, amazing tropical paradise. And you do have space here because it's not as like if you go to a city like Jakarta or something, yeah, it's intense. But you come to an island and you just have so much room to just kind of decompress. And that's why I have to get out of these big cities and just come to places like this to kind of chill out for, my own, I guess, mental health and everything. But I kind of wanted to kind of break down some travel tips for people that wanted to kind of go and explore some of these places. So like I said, the first trip that I did from Seoul when I was living there was going from Seoul, and then I went to Tokyo. And Tokyo is like, if you haven't been to Tokyo, man, you gotta go. It's just it's like Disneyland for adults. It's just like the technology, the culture, the fashion, the style, the people, the food. It's just like Tokyo, as far as big cities, is probably my favorite city. Um, it's funny because I'm actually not a fan of New York. Like I've been to New York a few times, but Tokyo is just like a whole different vibe. Like it's just a happening, really safe. People are incredibly friendly. Anybody who wants to come to Asia, I say that Tokyo should be like up there on your top, like one or two, like as far as just like a really, really awesome trip. And you can do it for a few days or you can be there for months and you could never ever like see everything and do it all. So I would say Tokyo, as far as cities, is like, you can't beat it. Hong Kong is cool. And I really like Hong Kong a lot because the English. So if you're like traveling and you're kind of like first time abroad, Hong Kong is easy because everyone speaks English there. Same with Taiwan. Like if you want a simple trip, I would say hit like Taiwan or Hong Kong. It's not as big of a culture shock, but if you go into a place like Tokyo, you're just like, I highly recommend watching a movie called Lost in Translation. I see my buddy Brian Swan on here. What's up, man? We were talking about this the other night, Lost in Translation. I'm surprised Jabril never seen that, considering all the traveling he does. So I'm just looking at some of the comments here for those of you listening on the audio. But yeah, I mean, if you want the extreme culture shock, I would say Tokyo, fly into Narita, and then you're just blown away. You'll just be like walking around like this, looking up at everything the whole time, and the people are super friendly. But like I said, English is the main thing there. And same with Seoul. If you go into Seoul, English is an issue. But places like Hong Kong, Taiwan, you can go there. People speak perfect English. All the signs are in English. It's super easy to navigate. Ordering food, all that stuff. Like literally there's places I go that I need like a menu. That's one problem is like you go to Japan, like if the menu doesn't have pictures or mostly it doesn't have English, if there's no pictures, you don't know what you're ordering. It's kind of like Russian roulette. So that's always interesting. Another place, as far as cost of living, a lot of people always ask about cost of living, like Tokyo is definitely on the higher end, like probably the highest in Asia. Just everything just adds up there. But if you're looking for like a cheap trip, I would say you've got three options, like the top three options for like budget traveling, but like just having a great time. I would say Thailand. Thailand it's so cheap, it's unbelievable. I would say Thailand, you can't miss. Vietnam is also really cool, and there's a couple of places in Vietnam I'll talk about it in a minute. And I would say Bali, but I would say out of those three options, for me personally, Bali is by far the best. Like I'm staying in this place right here, brand new hotel. It just opened, like incredible villa, and it's about $20 a night. $20 for a killer, nice room, really clean, and as you can see, awesome pool. The beach is just like a couple minutes away down the street, and in this kind of style in Tokyo, accommodation like this would be at least a couple $100 a night, like easy. So $20 compared to a couple hundred, that's a big deal. As far as these options, I would also mention a place in Vietnam that's really cool. If you're into like really traditional, historical, really undeveloped, but really kind of traditional villages. There's a place in Vietnam called Hoi An. Hoi An is really close to Da Nang. So you would fly into Da Nang, and Da Nang is like a really modern, up and coming city. Most people think of like Saigon or Hoi An or Hanoi in Vietnam. I actually haven't been to either of those, but Da Nang and Hoi An, these are two of my favorite spots I've been, and very, very reasonably priced. Beautiful beaches in Da Nang, and Hoi An is what I was saying is just like this really, really cool, like historic, authentic Vietnamese city. Not a city even, it's like a town. So that's where I would recommend for Vietnam. Where else? If you're looking for like cost of living, Korea is pretty cheap. Like when I tell people where I live on the beach and how much it is, like the thing though with rent in Tokyo and Korea, they have something called key money. And what key money is where you put down a large deposit. Could be 5 grand, it could be 100 grand. It's kind of like putting a down payment for that location. But what happens is when you put down that money, it reduces your rent. So, for example, if you put down even $30,000, I have friends that put down 30 grand. They don't pay rent at all. Like they could live there for 1, 2, 5, 10 years, never pay rent, and then when they move out, they get that rent money back. And same in Japan, they have this. It's called key money. Japan is a lot more expensive to put down. But in Korea, for example, I wanted to put down more money, but my landlord only wanted a little bit so that they can get the more monthly rent. So a common situation in Korea is you put down about $5,000 or $10,000, and then your monthly rent would probably be between anywhere from like $400 to maybe $700 a month, which is crazy because when I was back in Vancouver this summer, I couldn't find anything downtown for under $20,000, under $2,000 a month for downtown Vancouver. It's like impossible to find. So when you compare the lifestyle differences, and that's what I was talking with a bunch of guys with the other night when I was out that have been living here in Bali. Like here in Bali, it's even crazier cheap. Like you can rent a villa and a room. Like I've got a number of friends here that are paying about $400 a month, like $400 a month, $500 a month for like a sick place with a pool, with in the place. Some of them have cooks. They come in to do meal prep. So I think that the best expat lifestyle from everything I've seen and heard, like if you're someone that wants to come and live somewhere that's like, you don't really have the big modern city, but you have everything you need on an island, you can't beat Bali. Like I'm really, really looking at potentially, like if I leave Busan in Korea, like Bali is where I'm coming for sure. Like it's just healthy living. That's the other thing too, because when I first got to Asia like 8 years ago, it's crazy. I can't even believe it's that long. But 8 years ago, I would love to just go out. Like nightlife was like really important, like how is the nightlife scene? And that's why I love places like Japan, Korea, Shanghai, Hong Kong, because they have like the sickest nightlife in the world. Like, if you want to talk about nightlife, it's insane. Like there's clubs in these places that have lineups at like 4 a.m, people paying like $40-$50 to go into these clubs at like 4 a.m. and the clubs go to like 6-7 a.m. and they're packed. Like I've never seen anything like it. And that's a big reason why actually 2 years ago, like I was just like, all right, I'm done with this. And I still go out and go out and socialize, but I'm not like drinking and stuff. Like I'll have a beer or two now and then. But now my priority has shifted from like the nightlife focus to more of like the health, like really enjoying nature, I guess, like not wanting to be in these big concrete jungle cities and stuff, and just like really being more tuned into healthier options like surfing. Those don't know, like I just absolutely love surfing. I've been surfing 8 days in a row. I've been up every single day for 8 days in a row in the water getting wave. It's like my dream paradise here. So it depends what you're into. If you're looking for like a big nightlife happening place, Bali has that too. Like I've been up to like 4 a.m, like a few times here at just different events, and you can do whatever you want here. But whereas places like Shanghai, Tokyo, Hong Kong, they don't really have places like this that are like nature. I mean, in Hong Kong, they have beaches, but it's like outside of the city. Japan, there's no beaches around Osaka or or Tokyo. So like when I look at where I want to live, that's why I love Busan actually, because Busan has a city and really nice beaches. That's hard to find, you know, like the only other places like that are like Vancouver and Sydney, you know, that are really nice cities, but also have like amazing beach and nature and healthy lifestyles. So that's kind of my 2 cents here. It's about 15 minutes, and I kind of like to keep these short. But just wanted to pop on here and say it's been 8 years. It's crazy. I can't even believe how fast time flies and how much stuff I've done. But looking back on these 8 years, I'm just like, wow, like it's just been a trip and a half because there's been so many other. The cool thing about being based in Asia too is just that it's so easy to bounce around to other places. You know, like in Canada, it's like I said, it's so big. In America, to go from one coast to the other, it's basically like going from Asia to Canada. You know, like that distance is it's a long trip. And the thing is that here you can just bounce around to all these places. So if you're like somebody who works online or wants to kind of work remotely, being based in Asia, it's like it's such a good lifestyle and such a good option because you've got so many options. You can just hit it up and be in a different place basically every weekend if you wanted to for very reasonable prices. And that's the thing, like traveling here is a lot cheaper flight wise than back in North America. So that's my 2 cents. The food's amazing. I was out last night. I had like a fish steak for like $8 at like a nice restaurant. Like I still can't get over the prices. And the biggest thing too, like the pros and cons, you know, when I was back in Canada this past summer, you kind of forget about things like tipping and tax. Because here, there's no tax, there's no tipping. So when you go out for a meal, if it says $10, it's $10. Not that like tipping a few bucks is a big deal, but it kind of adds up. And I noticed that a lot of my friends and definitely like family and stuff, like they don't really eat out that much, just because it costs a lot more, like, you know, to eat out, and B, the actual, I would say it's a healthier options here. Like when I think about the food industry back home, it's quite heavy, it's greasy, and it's just not as healthy. Whereas here, it's just so like the meals I've been having here, a lot of it is organic. Which, if you know anything about grocery shopping or shopping at home, if you go out to an organic restaurant, it's like costing you an arm and a leg back home. But here, it's just how things are gone because it's just like farmed right probably behind my hotel. You know, like living longer here, aging better. You don't really see the natural causes of health degeneration in places like this where you do back home a lot. So, I mean, looking back 8 years, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be staying here, but it's definitely served its purpose, and I'm super grateful and happy to have made that decision. And hopefully hearing this, it might inspire some of you to maybe take a look and say, hey, well, I've always wanted to go here. Let's book a ticket, pack a bag, and go, because that's exactly what I did. You never know where things will lead you while you're end up. So that is that. Cheers to 8 years. And if anybody has any comments about anything that I've kind of mentioned here below, hit me up. Happy to help. That kind of wraps up this episode. And the other thing, I just saw a couple comments here I want to get to. Well, I'll just reply in the comments here because I'm doing the audio. But yeah, that's it. I've got a couple of really good podcast episodes I've recorded here. The only thing, though, that I'll say, like when you do come to places like Thailand or Bali and stuff, you're kind of relied upon not really the best infrastructure as far as technology and Wi-Fi. So like if you are traveling for work, you want to make sure that you are plugged in to have a good network connection. That's important. But the cool thing is that there's so many expats living here and all these other places I mentioned that they do have a lot of co-working spaces. Like for example, in Bali, they have a place called the Dojo, which I'm going to be going there actually this evening, and you can make it work. You know, there's definitely ways around it. So that's that, guys. I'm gonna head off and get some waves now. It's about noon. Enjoy your day or evening wherever you are, and thanks for tuning in. And see you on the next one.